be reading Exodus chapter 7, verses 8 through 24. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh says to you, 'Perform a miracle,' then say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake.'" So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the river. Confront him on the bank of the Nile, and to take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Then say to him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to say to you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But until now, you have not listened. This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the river will stink. The Egyptians will not be able to drink its water.' The Lord says to Moses, 'Tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in the vessels of wood and stone.'"
Good morning. How did everyone do? I like the entertainment. Okay. Can you hear me? Good?
Yes.
Here we go. All right, good morning. How's everyone doing today? I'm Pastor Tyler, and I want to welcome you all to Park Street Church. Everyone say hi, PG. There we go. So a few years ago, my family hosted several from our extended family for Christmas Eve. Mom had prepared a bunch of food, included a staple at our house, macaroni and cheese. But at this point in life, Mom was on a diet, and so she only had diet sliced cheese in the house. So it was macaroni and diet cheese. After we all sat down and prayed, the food was passed out and the kids started shoveling in the mac and cheese. Slowly, confused and disgusted looks started appearing on their faces. As they quietly told the parents that they didn't like it, it was gross. If we are honest, most of the time in life, we just prefer the real thing. The real thing is better.
I agree. Hey, I need the microphone. You can keep the beer, I need the microphone. I'm just glad he didn't put a pillow in his shirt. That's good looking guy though, I mean, I gotta admit. Thanks. Big hand for Zach. Let's see if we can do this. Good morning.
Good morning.
There, that's a little better. All right, so we're going to be in Exodus, if you don't know that, so you can go ahead and get ready. Let me give you a quick recap of where we've been. There's a guy called Moses. Everybody say Moses? Moses. Moses was your everyday guy. He was a father. He was a husband. He had his own insecurities and issues. He had a past that he wasn't real proud of. He had some disappointments and some failures along the way. But there came a moment that kind of changed everything for Moses, or at least it started a journey that would change everything. That moment occurred on a mountainside. He's out doing his job. He took care of sheep for a living. He's out doing his job. All of a sudden, he hears a voice. Moses. Now, when somebody says your name out loud, you start looking around, trying to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. And Moses looks around and he sees a bush on fire, but it's not really being consumed. And the voice seems to be coming out of the bush. He thinks it's an angry squirrel, so he says, "Yes, Mr. Bush, what can I do for you?" And the bush says, "Moses, I want you to take off your shoes because you're on holy ground." So he does. And then this bush is allegedly the voice of God. And so the voice is telling him these things that no real bush should know. And then he tells Moses that Moses is going to lead his people, his nation, the Israelites, out of slavery from Egypt. Moses says, no, you've got the wrong guy. God said, do it anyway. Okay. So he heads off. He's a little uncertain. He's not so sure. He says, wait. What if people don't believe me? Because after all, this is kind of a far-fetched story. A bush that's on fire, but it's not really being consumed, told me that I'm going to go march right into the heart of the most powerful nation on the planet, the Egyptians, and ask them to give up all of their workforce. I'm not so sure this is very believable. And so God told Moses, Moses, you see your walking stick? Yeah. Throw it down on the ground. So he does. And it turns into a snake. Everybody say, ah! Ah! And that's what Moses did. And then he picks it back up at God's command, and it turns back into a walking staff. And okay, that's pretty cool. And he says, Moses, I want you to stick your hand in your coat. So Moses does. And he says, now pull it out. And he pulls it out, and his hand is all leprous, and there's like disease and all sorts of things happening to his hand. Everybody say, ah. It's funny. When I say ah, everybody's voice goes high. When I say ah, everybody hits the bass. That's funny. So Moses is a little freaked out. He says, put it back in and it'll be healed. He does, and it is. That's fantastic. And then he gives him a third sign. We often forget about the third sign because he never has to use it. But he gives him a third sign. He says, Moses, if none of those work, I want you to take a cup of water from the Nile and dump it on the ground. When it hits the ground, it will become blood. Okay. So Moses, he goes back to the people with his brother Aaron. Everybody say Aaron. Aaron. Aaron is going to help talk because Moses isn't very confident in his speaking skills. He's going to go and he goes back to the people of Israel, the elders. He gathers them all around, explains the plan. We're going to talk to Pharaoh. He's going to let everybody go. They say, we don't believe you. Moses says, Aaron, show him. So Aaron takes his walking staff. He throws it on the ground. It turns into a snake. Everybody say, ah. And because I mentioned it earlier, some of you went high, and some stayed down low. So they're amazed. They said they believe right away. All right, that worked out pretty well. Things are going smooth. So they march into Pharaoh's office. Well, not really, because you have to request those sort of things. But they get a meeting with the Pharaoh, and they say, this is what's going to happen. The Lord, Yahweh, I am who I am, has asked that you release his people so that they may go and worship him in the desert for 3 days. Pharaoh says, no, I don't know this guy. Never heard of him. Don't know who the Lord is. So, no, I'm not halting all production for 3 days so you guys can go out and do who knows what out in the wilderness. No, we're not. It's not going to happen. Moses and Aaron, they're a little bummed. They leave. Pharaoh ups the workload on all the Israelites. They're bummed. They're mad at Moses. They're mad at God. They're mad at everybody. Moses goes back to God and says, I'm not sure this is going to work. We thought things were going smoothly, but we hit a little hiccup, and then things didn't go so well. Are you sure? And God says, yes. Now go. Okay. Pretty much caught you up. So here we are, Exodus chapter 7. Is everybody awake? All right. For anybody who didn't say that they were awake, smack them lightly. It's a lightning, Gabby. Lightning. All right. Exodus chapter 7 is where we're going to be, starting with verse 8. It says, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard. He would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Now this was the sign, right? This was the thing. This was what had convinced the Israelites. So surely this would be the thing that would convince Pharaoh. Let's go, let's talk to him. All right, throw down your staff. He throws down his staff. It turns into a snake. You don't have to scream, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. There are moments in our life where God commands certain things of us. In this particular passage, the thing that he commands of us is this: to believe. That was the key. That was the thing. You have to believe this. We're telling the truth. We speak with authority. Look, we can do something unnatural. We can turn this wooden stick into a moving, living, breathing serpent. But people won't believe. Pharaoh doesn't believe. Well, that's a bummer. And then he calls in his guys. His wise men, his Egyptian magicians, the men who practice the secret arts, and they do the exact same thing. And I always thought that's interesting. Like, how could they do the exact same thing? Well, as you know, in ancient Egypt, and currently today, snake charming is still a practice. People have been able to, with music or different things, control the movements and rigidity of snakes for years and years and years and years. And actually, scholars have found that there's some nerves in the back of a snake that you can squeeze that will make them go stiff until you let go of that and throw it down, and then they'll start moving around again. Now, I would never grab a snake by the back, but people who are familiar with them might. So that's what they think happened here. But notice that these Egyptian magicians, they don't exactly do the same thing that Aaron does. Aaron's staff becomes this snake. Then all of a sudden, these other snakes are all around her. And then Aaron's staff starts eating the other snakes. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched a snake eat something. Anybody ever seen a snake eat something? You watch Discovery Channel, you had a snake as a pet. I don't know. You fed it your neighbor's cat. I don't know. But there's, I have a cat. I love cats, I'm just saying. So it takes snakes a while to eat things. Like, this wasn't just a quick gulp, okay? It's not as though the snake came up and slurped up the other snakes like spaghetti. It takes snakes a while. They have to kind of, you know what I mean? And then they gotta use the muscles in their mouth and their neck to force the food down because they don't have any arms. So they can't shovel it in. It takes snakes a while to do this. Now, when we read through this text, how many people are familiar with this story? Okay, several of you. Okay, so it's not as though this happened, boom, in an instant. All these snakes are on the floor, and this snake, Aaron's staff, it goes up and it starts devouring one snake, and they're like, boy, that's a little strange. Must be a tasty fellow. Must have been made of mesquite. So they're slurping up. He's eating this snake. And he gets one snake down. Who knows how many minutes go by before the snake is fully inside the other. And then the snake turns and starts eating another one. Oh boy, he's a hungry fellow. And I just imagine they're all just standing around watching this thing because it's the weirdest thing in the world. I mean, sticks don't turn to snakes usually. But here's one, and it's eating all the others. So who knows how much time goes by? I mean, it could have been 15 minutes, could have been half an hour, could have been an hour. That they're standing there watching Aaron's snake devour all these imposters. And yet, after all that, Pharaoh doesn't believe. Doesn't believe. Doesn't listen. There are three things, right? And one of the things that God asks of us is that we believe. But there are times when we don't. Something incredible happens right before our very eyes, or maybe over an extended period of time, and he says, if you would just listen, if you would just believe, imagine all the heartache and pain and aggravation you would avoid. But we don't. Can you imagine? I mean, we know the story of the plagues and the Passover and Exodus and all that stuff that happened. Can you imagine if Pharaoh had just said, wow, you know what, I was wrong. This is incredible. You guys go and worship, man. You get, by all means, can I join? I want to be an Israelite. Like, this is incredible. Imagine all that could have been avoided. sometimes we just don't listen, even if the proof is right in front of us. There are things we don't listen. Whether it's about other people or about ourselves. I was at Catalyst 2 weeks ago, I guess, and a guy by the name of Robert Madu said this. He said, "I am loved, I am a child of God, and He is pleased with me." Everybody say that with me. I am loved, I am a child of God, and He is pleased with me. Imagine where your self-esteem and my self-esteem would be if every day we believed this truth. We are loved. Some of us, we go through life and we feel worthless. We believed lies that have said we have no value, we have no worth, we have no place. That our mistakes define us rather than God's word over us. Imagine where we would be if we believed with all of our being that we were children of the Most High God. Some of us came from messed up families and messed up homes where we were never told that we mattered, where we were never told that we were loved, and perhaps it went a step further and entered into the areas of abuse and neglect and hurt. Imagine if we believed this truth, that we were children of a God who cared for us, who loved us, who died for us. See? And imagine if when somebody said, God's pleased with you, we went, well, most of the time He's pleased with me, but I'm not so sure about that other time. You know the time I'm talking about. That one time, that other time, those couple of times where I let to get the best of me, where I couldn't control and yet this truth never changes. That I'm loved, I'm a child of God, and He is pleased with me. That would change how we see each other, how we see ourselves. Now, if it's true for me and it's true for you, then that means for me it's true of you, and for you it's true of me. So you could change it just a bit, and the truth still remains that you are loved, and you are a child of God, and He is pleased with you. See, it might be easy for us to go, well, yeah, of course I'm loved. Of course I'm a child of God. Of course He's pleased with me. I go to Park Street Church. But sometimes it's a lot harder to say, you are loved. You are a child of God. He's pleased with you. And you know all the yous that you have, all the people that we have a way of elevating ourselves over. All those people that do things that we don't agree with, and surely God doesn't, so He can't possibly be pleased with them, because after all, God defines us by what we do. Thank goodness He defines us by His Son. Imagine how different our world would be if we saw each other as loved children of God, whom God is pleased with. How much hurt and pain can be avoided. But we don't believe this big truth. Instead, we just consume little lies. That we are worthless, that we don't matter, that no one loves us, or that other people are the enemy. Believe. Exodus chapter 7, the story continues. Pharaoh doesn't believe this whole snake charming bit. He goes back inside. So then we get to verse 14, the first plague. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the water. Wait on the bank of the Nile to meet him, and take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Then say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to say to you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the desert. But until now you have not listened. This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord. There's that phrase from last week. With the staff that's in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile. It will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die. The river will stink. The Egyptians will not be able to drink its water. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, take your staff, stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in wooden jars, wooden buckets, and stone jars. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. He raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials and struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed into blood. The fish in the Nile died, and the river smelled so bad that the Egyptians could not drink its water. Blood was everywhere in Egypt. But the Egyptian magicians did the same things by their secret arts, and Pharaoh's heart became hard. He would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. Instead, he turned and went into his palace, did not take even this to heart. All the Egyptians dug along the Nile to get drinking water because they could not drink the water of the Nile. Moses and Aaron deliver this message from God. By this, you will know that I am the Lord. That's that phrase that appears 9 times in Exodus that I told you about last week. This is what's going to set it off. By this, you will know that I am the Lord. And yet, Pharaoh doesn't listen. Now, the Nile is what was affected here. The Nile is an interesting character in Egyptian mythology. The Nile was actually considered to be godlike. I don't know if you knew that. The Nile was everything for the Egyptians. The Nile Delta was their source of what? That's where everything grew. That's where everything happened. That's where everything lived. And so the Nile was seen as this kind of provider of all things. Without the Nile, they couldn't have crops. Without crops, they couldn't have money. Without money, they couldn't buy food or drink or anything. And so thereby, without the Nile, they don't live. So they came to worship the Nile. And actually, it's very possible and very common that in those days, Pharaoh would have been coming to the Nile not to take a bath, not to sit in the hot tub, but rather to worship at its banks, to worship the Nile. And so God interrupts that. He has this thing about when we start worshiping the creation rather than the Creator. He helps clear that up. And so Aaron, he strikes the water. It's as if God is saying, behold. We don't say that word very much, so I want you to say it. Say, behold. Behold. Yeah. It's a word we don't say very often anymore. Behold. In the Greek, I love the Greek word, it's idou. Behold. Look. Do you see it? It's one of those moments that takes your breath away at its scale. And the Nile is a pretty big river. I don't know if you've ever visited. I haven't, but I looked it up on Wikipedia, so it must be true. The Nile is 2 miles wide. 2 miles wide. So think you're driving on the interstate, 1 mile, 2 miles. You finally crossed both banks of the Nile River. It is 2 miles wide and roughly 4,200 miles long. It's big. So you can imagine standing on the banks of this massive, life-giving river, and all of a sudden it turns red. And not just red, but bloody red. And not just bloody red, but it was blood. It's interesting when you read through the text. It doesn't say that the Nile became like blood. It doesn't say that it became very red. It says it became blood. Incredible. I mean, can you picture that? And it's one of those moments that if you're standing there on the wrong side of God's judgment, and it happens at first, you're like, wow. And then you're like, oh crap. Because they didn't have washing machines. They didn't have house water filters. They didn't have mountain spring water they could pick up at the grocery store. This was everything for them. I want to help you get your mind wrapped around that. So this whole idea of worshiping the creation rather than creating. So let's say this. Let's say you're out on vacation. How many people would like to be on vacation right now? No, I like staying home and working. So let's say you're out on vacation. You've been planning this vacation for months and months and months. You're so excited for this vacation. You finally get there, wherever there is. Let's say you finally get there. This happened for us. We went to Disney World this past winter, and so we finally got to Disney World. We were so excited to finally be at Disney World, and we go to the Magic Kingdom. Now, when you have a little boy who gets to go to the Magic Kingdom, that's heaven, right? And I won't go so far as to say that Mickey is God, but he's probably an angel. Because he has that high voice that sings lovely melodies. So we get to the Magic Kingdom and we stop in the first place, and I'm like, all right, Dad's gonna be the cool guy. All right, so we get whatever we were getting, we're getting ready to pay. I hand the lady my card, she swipes it. Let's try this again. Seems like the card's denied. Really? Oh, okay then. That's awesome. So imagine you're on vacation and you have no money. Say this happens. You get ready to scan your card. You're like, oh, okay, must be the bank's fault. So you go and you call the bank, like, hey, I know this, you guys are busy, I'm sure, but I just had a little instance at a store. Could you check on my account for me? You rattle off the numbers. And they say, well, sir, your balance shows $0.00. Oh, really? Yeah, it's been that way. It doesn't look like you've ever put money in it, sir. Oh. Huh. How many people would be freaking out? We're very dependent on that stuff. Or how about this? We had a lock-in a couple years back. And I don't know if you know what a lock-in is, but a lock-in is where you take a bunch of junior high or senior high kids, you lock them in a room and see who survives. And we had a lock-in a few years back, and we wanted the kids to get involved. I almost said wanted to get them engaged. That's not what we wanted to happen. We wanted them to get involved with what was happening. We were playing games and having fun and interact with people. And so for that to happen, we told them we're going to collect everybody's phone. like for a game or something? No, for the night. I'm sorry. You're going to take my phone? Uh-huh. Right away, we had to send 3 kids to the emergency room. Like, you would have thought someone had pulled their heart from their chest. And we give them a hard time, right? And I'm a part of them. But we give the generations now a hard time because they're dependent on a phone. But reality is we don't know what it's like because we didn't grow up in that world. But everything is on your phone. Your access, your numbers, your friends, your relationships, your contacts, your social media presence, your voice in the world, your money, your pictures, your identity. There's a lot that is wrapped up in that phone for a lot of people, both young and old. So just imagine if you woke up and your phone was gone. Or imagine this. Imagine you come to church on Sunday morning. You park in your usual spot. You walk up the sidewalk, and there's no church building. Just a grassy plot. We gotta be careful. That's all I'm saying. We gotta be careful about worshiping the creation rather than the creator, worshiping the gift rather than the giver. Because after all, it's just wood. It's just paper. I mean, be careful. Be careful who and what you behold. Because as magnificent as the Nile is, and it's grand, it's not God. And as magnificent as it is to have a lot of money, it's not God. As great as our phones are, there's only one real relationship that matters. And as beautiful as this building is, God exists in, around, and outside of it. Be careful what you behold. Our thing is we don't behold this big God, but instead we bow to little lies. Is everybody still with me? Nobody wants to fire me yet, right? Haven't gone that far yet? Okay, good. There's still room. All right. Exodus 7. Let's wrap it up. Exodus 7, verse 25. We're going to go one more plague. Is that okay? We'll do one more? Just one. Okay, we'll do the rest. We'll do all 8. Just one more. 7:25. 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. So a week goes by after the water turns to blood. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. Let my people go, so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs. The Nile will teem with frogs. They will come into your palace and your bedroom, onto your bed, into the houses of your officials and on your people, and into your ovens and kneading troughs. The frogs will go up on you and your people and all your officials.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Tell Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the streams and canals and ponds, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt.' So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt. The frogs came up and covered the land. But the magicians did the same things by their secret arts. They also made frogs come up on the land of Egypt. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, 'Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord.' Moses said to Pharaoh, 'I leave to you the honor of setting the time for me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that you and your houses may be rid of the frogs, except for those that remain in the Nile.' 'Tomorrow,' Pharaoh said. Moses replied, 'It will be as you say, so that you may know there is no one like the Lord our God. Frogs will leave you and your houses, your officials, and your people. They'll remain only in the Nile.' After Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh, Moses cried out to the Lord about the frogs he had brought on Pharaoh. The Lord did what Moses asked. The frogs died in the houses and the courtyards and the fields. They were piled into heaps, and the land reeked of them. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart, would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said." Now, if you're reading through all this stuff, and as we go through the plagues, you may come across articles, or you may have saw a news report or something that says, well, there's a very rational explanation for all of this. Fair enough. And, some people might say, okay, no, the Nile turned red because when it floods, during flooding season, the Nile, it accumulates deposits of red clay, and so it becomes very red, and so that's what people saw. Okay, but it turned red in the pots and jars that were already in people's houses, too. Kind of hard to explain that one. But, okay, the frogs. Okay, there are a lot of frogs. I understand frogs can, they're cute, but they can be annoying. But when it floods, there's a lot of frogs that show up on the land. That makes sense, right? Sure. In fact, frogs were worshipped, believe it or not, in Egypt. The goddess Hecht. Everybody say Hecht. The only time I'll let you say Heck in church. Hecht. Not really. So Hecht was a goddess, and she was the goddess of fertility. and the goddess of life and the goddess of abundance. Because after all, when the floods come, then the frogs come. And when the frogs come, the people know that the crops are coming. And when the crops come, there is abundance. And when there is abundance, there is happiness. And when there is happiness, there are babies. You know it's true. And so, frogs start showing up, and people start worshiping these frogs as a symbol of life, and a symbol of fertility, and a symbol of better times coming. And so you can imagine, these frogs start showing up. Aaron stretches his hand out, drops the staff, and all of the frogs start coming, and they're like, okay, we've seen this before, but these frogs don't stop. They keep coming. In fact, the text tells us they show up in their homes and in their beds. That wasn't on accident. That's in there, by the way. Remember what I said? Flooding, frogs, crops, happiness, babies. The frogs have invaded. It says these frogs are not only in there, but they're in your ovens and in your kneading troughs and all the place where you're preparing the food. That's not on accident, by the way. Flooding, frogs, crops. See, this is an invasion, not an invitation. These frogs are invading all the private spaces. I don't know about you. I don't even like my cat in my bed. And if you've ever been in a restaurant and you find something in your food that shouldn't be there, it's disgusting. I don't care if it's your hair or somebody else's. It's an invasion, not an invitation. And so God is essentially saying, beware. Beware. Beware of these things that you worship that will let you down. And there were imposters. Did you notice them? Those Egyptian magicians, the men of secret arts. They, up to this point, have been able to mimic and copy and duplicate, but not to the same extent. Remember the staff trick, right? Aaron takes the staff, he drops it on the ground, it turns into a snake, and everybody says? Okay, 4 people say that. Okay. And the rest of you are much braver than me. And they do the same thing, but their staffs are eaten. Then when the Nile turns to blood and everything is ruined and everything stinks and there's all these dead fish and there's just blood everywhere in Egypt. By the way, that phrase appears twice in the text, probably important. Blood appears everywhere in Egypt. The Egyptian magicians go, oh, hey guys, look at this. We'll make more blood appear. Ooh. Yeah. Gee, thanks. It's like your accountant saying, okay, here's how much you owe at the end of the month, at the end of the year. You go, oh, man, that's a bummer. He says, but because I'm such a great accountant, I've actually found more taxes for you to pay. Gee, thanks. Then when the frogs come, these Egyptian magicians, they try and do the same thing, and it says they were able to make frogs come on the land too. Awesome. There was one thing I had a shortage of. It was frogs in my bed. See, imposters are always able to mimic, but never fully able to duplicate. Now, if these Egyptian magicians really wanted to showcase their power, they really wanted to denigrate and knock down this God of the Israelites, they would have reversed what Moses and Aaron had done. But they couldn't. They can't. Because imposters aren't the real deal. They don't wield the real power. They aren't genuine. There's just something missing there. And not only the Egyptian magicians, but let's not forget Pharaoh either. I mean, Pharaoh considered himself a god. I told you that a while back. He considered himself to be Lord of the world. And yet he couldn't stop any of this. And I love what Moses says to him. Moses and Aaron are summoned, and the Pharaoh says, look, go back to your God. Just tell him to get rid of the frogs. And Moses says, well, I tell you what, I'll give you the honor, out of respect for your position and your palace, I will give you the honor of telling me what time you would like me to remove this from your land. Like, that's nice, little Johnny. I know you can't do anything about it, but here, I'll let you pick the time. Pharaoh had no real strength, no real power in this issue. We got to beware of the imposters in our world who try and steal your attention and take your eye off of the one true God. I was fairly new to the internet scene back in high school, junior high, and we got email addresses, and that was cool. How many people have an email address? Okay. How many people actually use their email? Okay, a few of us still do, good. But the story came out, and it was pretty common. People were getting an email, and it went something like this. Dear Sir or Madam, I am so glad that I finally was able to reach you. My name is a Nigerian prince, and I have come into a great deal of wealth and would like to give you some. Please send me your account information so that I may deposit X amount of dollars into your account. Yours truly, Prince. And people were scammed. People lost money because they believed that, you know what? I think I do have a bit of Nigerian blood in me. You buy into the lie. We all do it. Maybe not that one. But somebody tries to sell us something to make our life easier, faster, better. And then we find ourselves either in the same spot or worse off than we were when we started. We try to plug that hole in which only God fits with all sorts of things and find ourselves dissatisfied. See, the problem is that we've been kissing frogs. All the true princes are to come. The true princes are here. The truth has been spoken that you are loved and you are a child of God and He is well pleased with you, and that I am loved and I am a child of God and He is pleased with me. So much so that He gave His only Son. Imagine what could have been avoided in the life of the Egyptians. Imagine the heartache and the pain that could have been avoided in your life. If rather than chasing after these imposters and these lies, we just listened and believed the truth. And here's the final truth. The truth is that love outlasts lies. And that's good news. No matter what we've done, no matter where we've chased, no matter how many times we've fallen flat on our face, God is still waiting there with His grace. He's standing at the end of the driveway and saying, come on. I'm here. I don't care where you've been or what you've done or who you've done it with. Come on. I don't care what you've been saying about other people or who you've been hating on or how you've been hurting each other or yourself. Come home. I know you bought into all of the lies and all the propaganda and all the junk that is cluttering up your life, and at the end of the day, you think you're going to find satisfaction and fulfillment, and you can't. The reason is you need me. Come home. Love never fails, never gives up, never runs out. So, Father, this morning, we find our world in a mess. Hurt and pain and accusations and betrayals and death, confusion and chaos. Looks a lot like Egypt. Things we don't understand. And yet, even in the midst of great trial and suffering, you are there, beckoning us, begging us to come home, to come and worship you, to turn our eyes to Jesus. Father, help us to tune out the lies. People who are pretending to be you, pretending. Help us to be real, to live and believe your truth. May we stand on the banks of every river. May we stand in our homes. May we stand at our workplaces. May we stand and behold not the creation in front of us, but the Creator behind it all. We thank you for your Son, Jesus, the greatest example of love that this world has ever seen. And it's in his name we pray.